Okay guys, so the next part of the Chief Assessors report that I'm running through is the E1, which is the evaluation of research processes used that are specific to the research question. What you need to think about in particular in this one is the fact that they've used specific to the research question, which means you need to talk about the types of sources that you accessed and the way that you use those sources, which not everyone ends up using. If you were to talk about interviews, magazine articles and cookbooks, and what you were looking at would be how cooking for a diabetic is quite difficult, then that is processes that are specific to the research question that you chose. If you look at websites and books and journal articles, it's not that lots of people look at those. Lots and lots of kids interact with those different types of sources and different types of processes throughout the research project. So if you use sources that are different to what other people may use, I would be talking about them in this particular section. All right. So what I'm going to do, once again, run through the different parts of this this overview, which tell you what if someone did something well and how some students created this part of the evaluation and actually was successful in doing it. But first of all, if you look at the Chief Assessors report, what they've actually said is that lots of kids put too much into this section. They think it's the really most important part of it. In reality, this is worth as much as what the next two sections are worth. So you need to stick to about 500 words discussing 3 different processes in this section. In total, this bit should be about 500 words out of your 1500. What I also need to look at is if the sources of the research processes helped you answer the research project question that you set. So tell me if it's useful, reliable, trustworthy, things like that. Okay guys, so I screwed that up. What I also need you to talk about is the question, and talk about how the processes that you used were specific to your question, and talk about the strengths and the limitations that came from what you asked and the sources that you were able to access because of those. What you need to talk about is if something was credible, something was reliable, and something was valid, and give specific examples of how those processes were valid, credible, and reliable. Remember, credibility is about the person who produced it. Reliability is about the information that's included in it. Look at how you use the research processes in order to develop your understanding or deepen your understanding. That shows how useful those processes were for you to be able to continue to develop overall an answer to your research project question. Okay guys, so that was just a frog in my throat that time. That wasn't me screwing up. You also need to look at the research processes and look at how they correspond with each other. One was more useful than the other. One was more effective than the other. Talk about being more reliable, most effective, most useful, less effective. Those kind of things will actually help you make valuable judgments about the different processes that you use. Remember, a process isn't just necessarily looking at finding a type of source. A process is actually the process of using that source in order to develop your understanding of the question that you've asked. All right. You need to make sure that you understand the difference between validity, reliability, and credibility, and that this is really quite clear in your evaluation through the examples that you give, why something is more valid, why something is more reliable, and why something is more credible. Also, I want you to make sure that you articulate why the research processes were fit for purpose. So if you're doing bowling action and you practice that bowling action 18,000 times, that's actually a valid way of researching, and it's fit for the purpose of answering your question. What I want you to make sure is every time you provide a judgment, you provide evidence for that judgment. Go back and say, this is what I did, this is why I did it, this is how successful that was. All right, cool. See ya.